Hello, everybody, and welcome to our session on You Can't Improve Your Business If You Can't Measure It. Just a couple of quick housekeeping things I want to go over to start off with. Questions today, if you'll just put them in the question panel, I will answer you back after the webcast. Also, we'll be sending you copies of the presentation within 48 hours. Now, let me quickly introduce myself. I'm Kim Koster, and I specialize in project and financial management. And today I look forward to sharing insights with you about how to fix your data and what the benefits will be if you do. Now, in our most recent Gauge report, we asked our respondents, what's keeping you up at night? And one of the top answers was operational efficiencies. So what that means to me is that executives are looking for ways to eliminate waste and to increase overall profitability. To me, that's just the bottom line. And one way to improve efficiency is to improve the quality of your data. All right, so being able to measure your business, it all starts with clean data. And what we use today to measure that, what's very popular right now, is the use of KPIs or key performance indexes. So let's level set quickly on what a KPI is. So it's a measurable value that demonstrates how effectively an organization is achieving its key business objectives. Now, organizations may use KPIs at multiple levels to evaluate success at reaching certain targets. So we may have high-level KPIs that focus on the performance of the overall enterprise, and low-level KPIs may focus on, say, project performance, process adherence, schedule, budget, etc. Now, in order to get a measurable value, you need data, because a KPI is going to require a calculation. So before we can even begin to talk about measuring your business, we need to discuss the state that your data is in. Now, cleaning up that old ERP data, it really is, honestly, I've been there, it's hard work, but it does have a wonderful payback. That payback's going to be accurate historical information that's going to tell you what worked in the past and things that didn't work in the past. That current information that's going to give you insight into what's working today, and then have forecasts so that you can predict the future. And this combination of accurate data, it truly will help you chart your future. Now, I found these quotes from IBM, and I'm just going to quickly read those. So IBM estimates that the yearly cost of poor quality data in the United States alone in 2016 was a whopping $3.1 trillion. I mean, I can't even begin to imagine that amount of money. Then the other quote was, 1 in 3 business leaders don't trust their own data. Now, when you think about it, why is that number so high? And to me, it becomes quickly apparent. So here's just a few reasons why that happens. We've got still, even in the age of technology that we're in, we still have so many manual processes and off-book calculations that are happening in the back office. So many times the accounting teams and the finance teams are going off and having to reconcile and re-reconcile that incorrect data. You may have processes and procedures, but they may not be documented, or worse, they may not be followed. And so we're continuing to correct errors and then beg forgiveness. We also have lots and lots of email, Excel spreadsheets, and PowerPoint. And still, again, like I said, in today's technological world, we still have a lot of disparate systems. So we have one system for accounting, maybe another for time collection, one for resource management, and then somebody's having to go and put all those together. You know, for the organization as a whole, the consequences of that poor data quality are loss of revenue, decreased profit, your reputation. You may not be winning as many projects as you were before, and the KPIs that your executives and your management are using to make decisions and that you're using to make decisions, they're wrong, and it puts your entire business future at risk. Now, I've visited many companies over the years that have what I call data churn, and it really is just accepted as a part of the fabric of the overall organization. So this is just a quick example. So Jim, he's the super analyst on Project XYZ. He has a spreadsheet, and his project manager loves that. He's been using it for years. I've had an ongoing project for years. Jim has to hand jam all the information from spreadsheets. He hands them into the spreadsheets from time collection, from an ERP, from an EAC tool, and comes up with this spreadsheet, and that's what's actually managing the project. Now, Sue, she's on project 123, and she's also a super analyst, and she's using an Excel spreadsheet for resource management, and she's also calculating project-specific metrics. Now, each project has a different set of metrics, and everything is different between those two, but both projects are really being successful. Now, all the disparate spreadsheets then have to be consolidated by the accounting and the finance team down below. So what a nightmare. Nobody really wants to let go of those custom spreadsheets. And how many times have you heard, hey, my project is so unique that I can't use a standard set of processes and tools? Or one of my favorite that I heard year after year, if it's not broke, don't fix it. Now, every time somebody says that, you should be hearing a loud cha-ching in the back of your mind, and that really is the sound of unnecessary expenses adding up. Now, as the project manager or a finance professional, the consequences of that poor data or lack of confidence in your project status, you don't know where you are, long hours making up charts and reports because you've got to go back in and double check and put those in Excel and reconstruct that from your systems. You also have that constant nagging feeling that the information that you just gave your boss, that it's wrong. And that could be both embarrassing internally and externally. And you can see down here, poor Arthur, he's the awesome accountant, but he is truly starting to pull all of his hair out, and we want to stop that from having to happen. So like I said, over the years, I've had the opportunity to meet with many organizations, and I ask right up front, do you have any data quality issues? And surprisingly, people tell me no. But keep in mind the statistics I shared with you before. So if we really dig deeper, there most probably are some issues. And it could be erroneous data from an implementation of software that you had maybe 2-3 years ago. You might have had process flaws that rendered maybe, I was just talking about inventory balances the other day, so that one's on my head. So maybe your inventory balances are incorrect, or maybe you have unbilled. So you kind of get where I'm going. Most people are going to have some issue within their data. So the first step to really fixing this problem is to admit that you have one. And once you admit that you have this problem, it's time to make a case for change. So I found some tips or steps to how to make a business case for data improvement, and I got those from Gartner. So the first is understand your business priorities and the right place to start. So for a business case to really have credibility, you've got to present it in the language of the business and then talk to the business priorities of the key stakeholders. Understand the business goals of the organization, and it will help you get the right level of support for your business case. And it's also going to help you identify the right senior level sponsor for the project. Now, second, select performance metrics to support the right business outcomes. So this next point is very critical. So one of the primary reasons for unsuccessful business cases around data quality is because the team goes in and presents about data quality. I know that sounds crazy, but what these guys are really interested in is successful metrics for the overall business. So how does having good data affect financial performance, operational performance, compliance, those kinds of things? Now, the next one is, the third one is, have financial metrics that actually matter. So linking that data quality to metrics is truly critical. Now, once the scope of the business case is agreed upon, initial data profiling can begin. So you'll want to carry out that data profiling often and early, and establish a benchmark with your data so that you'll know as you continue to improve how much better that you're getting, and you'll be able to demonstrate that impact and then continue to get funding for your project and show that critical business value that you need. The next one is describe the target state to achieve for your business improvement. So business leaders, they struggle a lot of times to understand that that data quality improvement is just not that one-time activity. It's important to make sure that they understand that it's going to have that same environment, or you're going to end right up back where you were. So we want to make sure that they need to understand that once this initial project is done, that we need to continue on that activity and make sure that our continuing data is correct. And the fifth one is to estimate the cost for the business case. So we're going to have a go or a no-go decision for the business case, and that proposal is going to come down to financials. Now, a good business case is going to identify the benefits for the initiative. They've got to be tangible, quantifiable, and desirable to the stakeholders. So you got to think about, again, think hard and long about what is important to your stakeholders. You know, for executives, it's normally what I call the big five: cash, profit, revenue, new orders, and growth. So I would pick one of those five if I was going off and looking at a business case in order to impress them and get my funding, internal funding for the project. So now that we've admitted that we've got an issue and we've made the case for it, you know, the C-suite now has to make a decision. And we've made a great case, and so they recognize that there's a problem, and they also know that there's going to be a positive financial impact if we get that data clean and if we keep it clean going forward. So now we have a go decision, and it's really time to get started. So from there, I'd form a tiger team. And that tiger team would be in charge of data quality. If you're not familiar with a tiger team, it really is a diversified group of experts that we bring together for a project or a specific need. Now, they're assigned to, they get the chance to investigate the problem, they can solve the problem, build and recommend solutions to all these problems that we're going to have with our data. Now, it's mostly populated with mature experts who know what's at stake, they understand the business model, they know what's to be done, and they can also work well with others. In this case, it's going to have to be a cross-functional membership of the team. So their strengths are diversity of knowledge, being able, again, to communicate cross-functionally. They need to be very strong decision makers and have organizational agility. Now, you need this team to fix the old issues, but you're also going to have them move forward with recommendations to maintain the quality of the data going forward. Now, the other thing too, this green guy or gal down here. Now, a strong leader needs to be identified because data quality truly touches every single person within the organization in every aspect of the business. So that selection of that leader is very important. He or she is going to have a very hard job because they all have to fight that we've always done it this way line. So what you ultimately want is the entire organization really feeling that sense of pride in the quality of their data. And the end goal, to me, is to have a culture that recognizes the overall importance of that data to the business and the business outcomes. Step 3 would be to put together a plan. So just like with any other project, a plan needs to be established. So because of all the different moving parts and all of the functional groups that are going to be involved, we really are going to need a detailed plan to help coordinate all this effort. So we're going to need to know what we're going to do, who's assigned to do it, who's responsible for it, and when is it going to be completed. And I would also suggest having a meeting cadence with the team as well as with sponsors and executives. The scope of that overall project will dictate the meeting and coordination needs. So, you know, it would really depend on how large the overall project was. And a quick note, you know, defining what the scope is for this project, it's very important because they need to understand what they're supposed to do and what they're not supposed to do. So because data quality truly does, again, affect the entire organization, this team can very easily get overwhelmed. And there may be multiple teams then working in tandem. So definition of the work and the handoffs and the overall schedule is very critical. All right, so step 4 is creating policies and procedures and then keeping them updated or creating them in the first place. So what is a policy? It really is that guiding principle used to set direction in the organization, and the documentation of that overall process is a policy. A procedure is a series of steps to be followed as a consistent and repetitive approach to accomplish an end result. Now, just because you have those policies and procedures doesn't mean they're applicable to your organization today. They may be 10 years old and sitting in a notebook over on the shelf in a conference room, and it doesn't really mean that anybody's using them. So that tiger team may also have a policy and procedure lead, somebody that's going to go in and look at each individual functional group's policies and procedures, and that's going to be key in keeping that data clean going forward, because without them, there's absolutely no control over what's being input into the system. So just a couple of thoughts here about policies and procedures. Make sure that the policies that you have are best practice for your organization. A good way to test that is to look at what other organizations are doing that are best in class. Assure that the policies and procedures are really helping the teams be successful, that they're not keeping them from being able to actually do their job or meet your business objectives. Now, my opinion is that these policies and procedures should also provide standardization to at least get level 3 maturity. So, in other words, the entire organization is following the same policies and procedures, and they're tailorable then for special circumstances. We also want to make sure there's a repository where everybody can get access to the current documents. You don't want to be guessing what version you have, whether it's 1, 2, 3, or 4, off of an email, or going back and having to look at the dates of the file that's on your computer. You really need a repository where those policies and procedures are that are current and up to date, and when people go to it, they're only accessing the ones that they're currently needing to follow. We also want a feedback loop to make sure that they are being followed. So, one way to do that is to ask the stakeholders, the people that are using the policies and procedures. The other way, too, is to do a self-audit plan. So go in, audit what's being adhered to, and then make corrective actions. Now, again, I can't state how important it is that policies and procedures are followed and current and usable in the overall process of keeping your data clean. All right, so step 5 is select an integrated tool that will truly make the project lifecycle come alive. Now, selecting that right tool for the organization is critical, and selecting a wrong tool can be very costly to implement for the organization, but even worse, it could be very costly to maintain. Now, a tool is not going to necessarily solve your problems, but it truly is an enabler to maintain process adherence. Now, you'll have more success if you do pick a tool that's truly integrated. So just a couple of questions that you might answer for yourself as you're picking a tool. Is it project-based? What's the architecture of the software? Is it web-based, one database? Is it cloud-ready? Is the company you're buying from, are they customer-centric? Is the system going to require customizations? Will it meet the needs of the teams? And that's really critical. Can't just meet the needs of the accounting and finance teams. There's other teams like the project management team that need to be thought of in this overall process. Will the organization save money if they get the right tool set? And then what's the true cost of ownership of the tool? Now, another aspect of a system that you want to look for is the ability to help you enforce those business rules. So things like, flags for planned work for active project where you have a cost structure missing. Well, that's huge for it to be able to comb over the data and see that. Or check for an active employee without an email address in their profile. So things like that are really important, and they'll help keep the quality of your data. A tool like, say, Unanet may have 30 or 40 different business rules that you're able to hone in on and make sure that your data is in the system and that it is in there correctly, and it'll identify where it's not. Now, this type of capability, it's going to act like an invisible analyst, and it's going to work in the background, and it's going to comb over all of your data 24/7 to make sure that all of your data is accurate. Now, the selection of an ERP system or a business intelligence tool, it probably is not in scope of this Tiger team, but the Tiger team can definitely assess whether or not those tools are effective in the keeping that data clean and being able then to get the resultant KPIs to measure your business. All right, so step 6, you need to form a training plan of ongoing activities to keep your data clean. So it must be a piece of that schedule that you're putting together, your overall plan. Since this comes at the end, training comes at the end, there's always that tendency, I've seen it over and over again, to want to skimp on training and save money. But trust me, it will definitely cost you down the road. So role-based training, in my opinion, is definitely the best. So first off, when I want to look at the policies and procedures and how they affect that person. So they want to see what their role is in the policies and procedures. We also need to let them know why they're doing it, but also in addition, who they're affecting downstream if they don't follow those business rules. So a lot of times people don't want to cause anybody else a problem down the road, but they don't understand that what they're doing is making that happen for them. They don't understand that they're making the inventory folks have to work all night if they don't put that purchase order in correctly. So very, very important to make sure that, again, everybody understands what they're supposed to do, why they're doing it, and who they're affecting. Most likely, too, organizations have spent a lot of money on tools, or they're going to spend a lot of money on tools. So, give the teams that tool training. Again, training comes down at the end of the implementation. We say, oh, we're going to train the trainer, but make sure that the trainer that's training has truly been trained. Or go ahead and pay for the software company to do the training themselves. You definitely want to be able to maximize the investment that you're making in those tools. All right, step 7 is assess your talent base. So make sure that you have the right people in the right jobs. And if there's changes that need to be made, make them. You may have, this is a crazy example, but you may have a talented engineer doing accounting work. Maybe he's not very good at debits and credits, but he's wonderful at designing. So move him, put him where people are doing their best. And then assess, too, where you have talent gaps and look for those strategic hires. So having the right talent, the people in the right jobs will also help with those inputs into the system and make sure that they're correct, that people understand what they're doing and, again, why they're doing it. All right, so step 8 is to establish standard KPIs. And this can be an entire webcast in and of itself, but we're just going to take a small piece of it. So we want to establish those standard KPIs for the business, and this is going to help everybody understand where the business is going and how the data that they're working so hard to protect and keep clean is being used to make great business decisions. So just a couple of ways that you might want to think about, a couple of things you might want to think about when you're picking your KPIs. Make sure it has a very clear purpose. One thing I can think of from looking at, data metrics is the information that's going in for project initiation. That's always, a very important piece of getting the information and being able to bill the customer and collect time. So very important. Any kind of contract metrics that we might have. So, we want to keep our data clean, and those are very clear things that we can go in and measure and tell how well our processes are being adhered to. We also want to have those KPIs in a standard business language. So one of my favorite ones, I love EVM. I know I'm an EVM geek, but I love to talk about TCPI, or to complete performance index. Well, nobody knows what that is unless I tell them. But you can understand this one thing. You can understand how much work they'll have to go and how much is it going to cost. So, that's putting in a language that everybody can understand. You also want to align with your current processes. Okay, so make sure that you're looking at information, like say for project initiation, make sure that all the information that you're looking for within the metrics, that you're seeing those in your current process. You also want to make sure that you have a holistic approach. So think through the unintended consequences. And one that I can remember we actually did this was we went off and said, every single project is going to be on schedule. Well, what does that mean? That means that sometimes we have to have overtime. Sometimes we have to maybe get a subcontractor instead of having our own labor. So what was happening then, we were on schedule, but we were running over on our costs, which was affecting our profitability. So, make sure that you look at a holistic approach. Again, make sure that you're driving the desired behavior. Encourage people to put that information in correctly and reward them when it happens. Another great way to see KPIs, again, is to have a dashboard and then define those tolerances. And we've gotten very used to, over the years, red, yellow, green, and blue. And so when I look at a dashboard, my eyes go straight to red or straight to yellow, and I'll know then that I have a problem. Okay, so again, make sure that you follow the IPA rule, that your KPIs are important, that there's potential improvement that you can see from measuring that, and that there's authority over the KPI to make changes. Alrighty, so step 9 is continuous improvement, and you may recognize this from Stephen Covey's Habits of Highly Effective People. And today, when we talked about improving our data, we really have addressed all three. So knowledge, what to do and why people are doing it. We're going to give them the training and the skills and the how to. And we're also going to give them the desire, because we're going to get those business outcomes that everybody wants, okay? And through that, those intersection of those three, we're going to formulate great habits. And in this case, the great habit is going to be to follow the business rules to keep that data clean. Okay, so now that we've talked about how we're going to keep our data clean, let's talk about some of the benefits that we're going to have from doing that from a business perspective and some of the outcomes that we may get from that. So first off, we'll talk about, again, defining those KPIs that drive business strategy, and here's just some common ones. So here's some for the project, and then here's some from the enterprise. So when we're thinking about picking a KPI from the organization, we probably want to answer several questions. So I'm going to walk through an example and how this would flow through all the way through the thinking that an executive or a manager should have. So what's your objective? All right, so our objective is to increase our revenue for this coming year. So what are we going to call that metric? All right, we're going to call that metric revenue growth KPI. All right, now here's how we might define it. So what are we going to achieve? All right, we're going to achieve 15% this year increase in our revenue. And why are we doing that? Because year over year, we have been losing money. And if we increase by 15%, we're going to become profitable. How are we going to measure that? Well, we're going to measure that through increase in revenue, and we're going to be able to see that month over month, quarter over quarter, because we have a tool that's going to give us that data. How are we going to do that? Well, we're going to do that by hiring additional sales staff and upselling to our existing customers. And in addition, we need to win 50% of our current bids, so we need to be able to track our win-loss ratio. Who's responsible for this metric? Well, the COO. He is going to be responsible. He is the one who is responsible for our operational success, and so he's the one who should be responsible for this metric. And how do we know that we're going to be successful? And how we know we're going to be successful is that we have increased revenue by 15%. And lastly, and one of the most important to me, is how often are we going to review it? Now, this KPI is going to be reviewed on a monthly basis, and we will be looking at that during our standard finance cost review. Now, you have to ask yourself, that little example that I gave that you walked through, those are the kinds of questions that you want to be asking yourself as you decide what KPIs you want for your business. And now that you have great data, you should be able to select KPIs and feel confident that the information that you're getting on those KPIs is correct. Now, another benefit for good data is that you'll be able to benchmark. So you're going to have a target, and let's say a target for your division. You may have a different division with targets also that you can make comparisons. But we have both internal and external benchmarkings. And benchmarking really is just looking at other people's performance, their expenditures, policies, procedures, and then comparing them to your organization. And it really is a great methodology to look internally and externally to see what others are doing to be successful. So internal benchmarking across divisions, departments, and portfolios, it can be extremely helpful for you, but unfortunately, it's very difficult. A lot of companies are still siloed, and they have varying processes, procedures, and that disparate systems that make the exchange of information very difficult, just like we talked about when we first started the webcast with Jim and Sue. Now, external benchmark can be very powerful. There's no prep for it. There's no cost. There's no manipulation of data. And now that you've got great data and you've got a target, you could go out and look at those external benchmarks and compare them to yourself. Now, going outside, And looking at external will give you a perspective of the overall industry. You can see how you stack up against other government contractors or professional services companies. It's going to provide you an understanding of what other people are doing to be successful. It'll give you those new ideas. It'll get your creative juices flowing and think of ways that you can improve your business. And you're going to be more competitive, and ultimately, you're going to win more business and be able to grow your organization. Now, having great data is going to give you the ability to do trend analysis. So now it truly is a reality. So data analysis, it's the process of inspecting, cleansing, transforming, and modeling data with the goal of discovering that useful information, suggesting conclusions, and then supporting great decision making. It requires that you look for patterns and relationships within the data. For instance, when you're looking at labor forecasts or utilization, we know that there's going to be more vacation taken in June, July, and December. So we want to make sure that we account for that. We can see that trend year over year. And it's going to give you a better, overall, you'll be able to look at these trends, and it's going to give you a better understanding of your data and what your data is actually telling you. Also, you want to look for special occurrences in your data. So occurrences like here in Wilmington, North Carolina, where I live on the beach, and all of a sudden last year we had a huge snowstorm, and it really shut our city down for over a week. So people couldn't get out of their driveways. So there was no billable work that was going on that could be performed. Now, it may not snow like that here in Wilmington, North Carolina, and I hope it does not for another 20 years. So we want to make sure that we account for that in our data. We don't want that week or week and a half where nobody could do any work to skew any kind of decisions that we're making going forward. So we need to be able to put some English on our trends and then make sure we understand what really made that data up. So in doing that, it's worthwhile really to understand then what the underlying data looks like. And an example is that you might have an overall company profit rate that's 10%. You say, whoo, that's great. That's exactly what I wanted. But it's really important to drill down further and see what's happening at the portfolio and the project numbers at the level to understand what's really contributing to that number. So you may have a portfolio that's hitting its number, and it may be made up of 10 different projects, but 8 projects are performing great. 2 projects aren't performing well at all. And you know what? You may be making your 10%, but if you've got those 2 projects to perform better, you may be making 12 or 13%. So by not being able to probe deeper, you may be leaving money on the table. So very important to have a system that allows you to go in and just click and drill. So say from this pie chart, I'm able to click on that space, and then I get these 2 different reports here so that I can see exactly where I am and what is making up, then in this case, the project billable charges. All right, next, we want to use an integrated system. And when I say integrated system, I mean ecosystem, okay? And we want to make sure that all the data is linked together properly so that we increase the probability that that data is going to be correct. And that integrated ecosystem will make that happen. So there's going to be people, processes, and tools. So we have the great people that we talked about earlier. We've picked the right people, and we've trained them on the processes and the tools. And if we have these 3 items forces working in concert together, we're going to have more success than we could possibly imagine. And it sounds simple, but it's actually very difficult and something that people really strive for, to make sure that they have excellence with their people, processes, and overall tools. All righty, so that concludes our webcast today. If you have any questions about how to improve the quality of your data, or you have any questions about how Unanet could help with providing an integrated system, please get with me at kcoster@unanet.com, and please put in any questions that you might have into the console. But thank you very much, and I hope I've given you some things to think about the quality of your data, how to improve it, and the benefits of having that great data and being able to truly measure your overall business performance. Thank you.